All right, we seem to be missing the gavel this morning, so that's as good as it gets. Thank you, Carrie. That gets everybody's attention. All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Rotary Thursday.
No, I didn't hear what she said.
It's great to see everyone
No.
this morning. Dennis is working with a couple people on the Zoom side to just get our speaker lined up, so you might hear some background noise there as they get that working. But we'll go ahead and start with—
Try that 991-484 again, David.
Bill, if you don't mind coming up here for the microphone to—
October pod is on deck, and here we go. Wow, this has got a platform. I never knew this was back here. We're going to move that, though. All right. There you go. All right, so looky there. If you'll join me in prayer. Dear God, we thank you for today. We thank you just for the awesome reminder of all that you do and all that you're controlling.
Right, exactly.
The crisp fall air that's upon us, and we just know that the seasons are going to change, but you will always be there steady and stable, holding us. We thank you for the blessings that you have given this, the people in this room, the people that are on the Zoom, the people in this community. We ask you continue to guide and lead our nation, our nation's leaders. You be with our men and women in uniform who are in far off places doing wonderful things on behalf of
our
country and our allies. We ask that you bless the food and nourish our bodies that we've enjoyed, and that you bless our time together. In your name I pray. Amen. Pledge, if you'll join me. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Bill. So again, on the Zoom side, if you mute your microphone when you're not talking, we might hear some background noise as we make sure our speaker gets all set up for the time being. We have a tight agenda this morning or today, so we're going to kind of do things a little bit differently. Some of the announcements maybe might come at the end if we have some time. So just for sake of time, we're going to get to our 2 agenda items this morning, which is Mark is going to talk a little bit about Change for Change with a twist. So he's going to spend about 10 minutes doing that. And then we'll have David Brook, small business specialist from NASA, Marshall Space Flight Center, talking about what he's doing with those programs. So, and that's going to take about 30 minutes if we allow for some questions. So again, if you don't mind, we'll hold the announcements to the end and some of the brags just for the sake of time. Before we get to any of our agenda items, we do have one piece of club business that we'd like to take care of. It's a happy business. So Brenda, Sheila, would you mind coming up? Okay, we have a brand new member, Miss Brenda Stevenson Matthews, who's been with us now for 6, 7, 8 Zooms. It's been, she's you know, she's zoomed in and now she's here in person. We look a little bit taller on the camera, so obviously we're not quite that tall. I'll give Sheila. Sheila sponsored Brenda, and we're very appreciative. Sheila, Emily, and myself had a lunch with Brenda. I think it was last week, and it was we spent probably an hour talking, which seemed like 10 minutes because we just kept talking. Brenda's a great addition to the club. She's been a Madisonian for many, many years, although she's originally from Mississippi. I think she's known about our club for a long time through Sheila. They've been friends for a long time, I think in the same sorority. She's from Mississippi. She's excited that Deion Sanders is going to be leading Jackson State football, so we'll see how that goes. So please join me in welcoming Brenda to the club.
I think I did a boo-boo with the pen.
Okay, we'll get another one.
Okay. Let me see if I can speak it. It's better. There we go. There we go.
We'll get our official social distancing picture. you want to say anything, Ron?
Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited. I'm a 25 plus year Madisonian, as Peter said. We've been here long time member of the Y. So I've seen coming and going for, oh gosh, however many years the Y's been here. We are morning Y workout, my husband and I. So I'm excited. I see a lot of great things that the club has done. I know a lot of great people in it. Sheila and I, same. Her married name is my maiden name, so that's no connection. Also, no relationship there, but we are from the same sorority. So I'm excited to be here and had a great lunch and everything. So thanks a lot, Peter. Thank you.
Brenda's also a vice chair on the board of the Y, so she has a connection to the Y besides us and working out. Okay, with that being said, I think we have Change for Change coming up this month. And there's a small twist to it, and I'm not going to give that away. Mark is going to come up here, and he's leading our Polio Plus efforts this year. We're going to pull up his presentation, and we're going to turn it over to our longtime Rotarian, about 2 weeks now, Mark Highsmith.
Good morning, my fellow Rotarians. As the oldest, newest member, since there's a new member today, and now I'm not the youngest, but it has been a wonderful opportunity. Peter asked me to take part and take charge of the Change for Change for the month for our In Polio Now. Now, with it being Change for Change, how about a change, right? So we're going to have a change for change to help In Polio Now. So what has recently come out was working through Rotary International and working with some other groups. We're going to do Change for Change differently this year, and it's going to be called the PPDD. And when I first said it, I was like, man, that's a mouthful. But it's going to be the Purple Pinky Donut Drive. Okay. I know everyone is excited about what is the Purple Pinky Donut Drive. Back in the next slide, please. So quickly, I'll go over a couple of items. Polio, the Purple Pinky Donut Drive, and then how you can help in some of our goals. Next slide, please. So briefly, I'll just talk about polio. Polio is a paralyzing, potentially fatal disease and that weakens and shrinks many of the muscles. Traditionally, it's an incurable disease, but it can be vaccinated to prevent it from happening. Mainly affects children under the age of 5, and primarily it's spread through contaminated food or water, and it's transmitted through droplets. And some of the symptoms are sneezing and coughing and such. So on October 20th is the World Polio Day. However, the twist in the Change for Change is we're working this year, through Dunkin' Donuts, through Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and they're helping to foster and favor the In Polio Now World Polio Day. Now, with that, traditionally, at those locations, they'll also be selling donuts. There are $2 donuts, and those the In Polio Now donut. And I'll show you. You had a quick peek of what that donut looks like, but they'll be selling those donuts, and those donations will also go to In Polio Now. And it'll be a glazed donut with a purple frosting top on the side. Now, a lot of people are saying purple pinky. Help me understand. Next slide, please. So, what the purple? Well, I'll talk more about it. So, with that, for each $2 donation, they're going to with the Gates Foundation. They're going to match those. But for the club, this is where it gets very interesting for us. So for every $10 for every, or they're not really a dozen donuts, but for every 10 donuts you order, it's $20. But that $20 equals a $180 donation towards In Polio Now. So you're really getting a 9-for-1 for the dollars that we spend. So I know that many of us are, number one, many of us want the donuts. The second is for those who don't want donuts, we'll talk about that as well. And we can still utilize that money going towards this fundraiser to help end polio now. Okay, next slide. The Purple Pinky. So some people ask Purple Pinky, I don't get it. So the Purple Pinky, in countries where there's a threat of polio, every child under 5 receives that polio vaccination twice a year during the National Immunization Days. And many of those, during that time, the little pinky finger is annotated with purple dye so that it's an indication that that person was vaccinated. So it kind of helps out with the whole. So over time, that purple pinky has become kind of like the international sign for I've been vaccinated with polio. Okay, next slide, please. So how we can help. So I talked briefly a little bit about this in the lead in. So what we will do is any members have the ability to order a box of donuts. It's $20, and those donuts we'll receive those donuts, and you can do with them what you would love. We can donate them to different organizations and places around the city of Madison. You can take them home and sleep with them. You can eat as many as you possibly can. I'm definitely down for a donut eating contest if that's what we would like to do as well. But what we'll utilize the purplepinky.org website, and I'm going to talk a little more about it. We're going to lead it through our pod leaders. So our pod leaders will be the point of contact. That way we can make sure, and Carla and I was talking about this, we can annotate to make sure that everyone's who makes those donations, that we keep accountability of that, and those donations go towards the Paul Harris Foundation. Your credit for Paul Harris. Next slide, please. So what we'll do is we'll utilize our pod leaders, and some people will give me the look because I had the look of my pod leader. Again, I said 2 weeks in. So I was trying to figure out who my pod leader was, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you'll send a note or an email to your pod leader or a phone call. We still do that here in America. We'll talk to your pod leader, let them know how many cases of donuts you like. We'll coordinate the money, and then we'll work through on the 20th is when those donuts will be available. The 16th will be the last day to make your order. So this is kind of the process is a little faster than what we normally do in Change for Change, but I think the end result and what we will receive for the club and what we'll do for In Polio Now will be the impact will be greater. If you could hit the next slide, please. Pod leaders. So I was thrown back a little bit at first. The pod leaders are by month. And I was actually thrilled and thrown back that you guys thought enough of me to nominate me to be a pod leader. I was thrown back, but I'm definitely surprised and very happy. But with this, what I'm going to do, and I know I only have 10 minutes, so I'm trying to keep this concise, is I will have the presentation sent out to everyone so you'll be able to see it. I'll also make sure that I will personally contact and get the presentation to all the pod leaders so they'll have it, as well as the sheet in which you can register so that we can keep up. And then every week, like today, I will have on my purple to help remind everyone about the Purple Pinky Donut Drive. Next slide, please. Now, for those of you who are saying, hey, I really appreciate that, but I'm really not into the donuts. So what we will do is if you could get with me, and what I will do is I'll take all those donations. We'll send them also to the Bluemont group, and we will still get credit because the key here is being able to get the 9-for-1 match. If you were able to go online and make your donations like many of you have done in the past, that would be great. You're still going to get credit and you're still going to get your 2-for-1. But if you would go through the club on this particular Purple Pinky Donut Drive, we're going to get a 9-to-1, and that money can still go back, and it's still going to help end polio now in the end. So I just ask that you let me know, and I will reach out to everyone or anyone who's interested. I'll collect all the money, and I'll work with Bob, and we'll send a check to the Purple Pinky P.O. Box. Next slide, please. So the goals. So I saw this before, 10,000 children vaccinated. So in order to do that, it's about $3,300, which is about 167 dozen, not really dozen, boxes of donuts. I would love to get everyone's participation. In order to do that, I did an average. I'm not in the making industry, but I saw what Peter was doing, and he's like on a total another level than me. So I did an average, so about 54 per member, which would vaccinate roughly 133 children with the polio vaccination. And that's if everyone donated. Now, that does not mean you cannot donate more. Please don't. And if you say, hey, I only want 2 boxes of donuts, but I would love to donate $100, the money will still work out the same. The last day to order will be the 16th of October, and we'll work with those pod leaders, and we'll pick up those donuts and distribute them to you if that's what you want. Or we'll also work to, Peter and I talked about, maybe we would like to donate them to maybe some of the school districts or some of the schools, or I would never to some of our first responders or just people in the community. But this is just a great opportunity for us to, again, participate in Change for Change with the Purple Pinky Donut Drive. So thank you. If there's any questions, feel free. I'm sure I have maybe like 1 or 2 minutes to answer any questions. If not, I will be more than happy to talk to anyone through email on that thing called the telephone or anywhere else. The foundation. Yes, sir. Yes, I'm sorry. Great question.
The district and the Rotary International Foundation are both going to do a match along with the Bill Gates Foundation, and that's how it turns into a 9-for-1 match. All right. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so more to come on that. That's kind of a quick one. This just came on our radar last Friday, so we're trying to rush it through just because it's a 9-to-1 match, so we can't let that opportunity pass us by. I hope that we got everything worked out on the Zoom side. David, are you with us?
I am. Can y'all hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Can y'all hear me?
Hold on, David. They're checking their mic.
Okay. I think, Rajiv, if you want to introduce David, I think it's all working.
All right, everybody.
Okay. Rajiv's introducing you.
All right. So first time for me back in a while, and Cheryl and Cynthia and I were talking about that. It's mainly because I'm lazy. Second is because I have a lot of East Coast customers, so I'm always having the 7 o'clock Central Time meeting because 8 o'clock. Be quiet, Siri. No, it's my Siri. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. It's David Brock, who's the small business specialist at the Marshall Space Flight Center. Dave and I have been friends for a very long time. David's in charge of both the small business program at the Marshall Space Flight Center. We call the Mentor Protege program at the Marshall Space Flight Center. You're not going to meet anybody who's more dedicated to advancing the cause of small business and with NASA, holding the folks, those of us at NASA who do contracts and go out and buy things, accountable for making sure that we incorporate small businesses in our procurement plans, in our buying programs, and the other anything else that we do that requires us to go out and purchase things for the agency. Another thing David does is he holds our big primes accountable to make sure that they meet their small business goals. Twice a year, David has a meeting with our major primes and basically jawbones them and lets them know that where they are with their goals and where they need to be. Besides that, David has just been a good friend to me and for all the other folks who've worked with him. Just a quick bio for David. He entered the federal sector in December 1984, where he joined NASA as a procurement analyst and he's been involved in the small business program for 34 of his 36 years of federal service. He's officially appointed to the position of small business program manager in 2005, and he's been managed, and he's been reassigned. He works for NASA headquarters now because they've moved all our programs up to all our small business programs up to NASA headquarters in October 2019. David's a native of Boaz, Alabama, and has been married to his wife Shirley for 45 years. Has one son and 3 grandkids. He graduated from Boaz High School in 1971. Got an associate's degree in science from Sneed State Community College in 1980 and a bachelor's degree in business administration from UAB in 1983. David's an avid reader. He enjoys traveling, music, and sports. David, I'm going to flip your charts for you, but everybody please welcome my friend and colleague, David Brock.
All right. Thank you, Raji. Can you hear me okay?
We got you, David.
Yes, they can, David.
Okay, excellent. Had a little bit of a glitch this morning, which is kind of common for me. If you know, I've got a vision problem, and so I have to sometimes get at these things a little unorthodox, if you will. So, but anyway, I'm glad to be here this morning and have an opportunity to talk with you. And same back to you, Raji. I consider him a friend, and it's been a joy working with him over the last few years. He didn't tell you, but he is one of our small business tech coordinators. That kind of sounds maybe not too jazzy in terms of a title, but we have 16 tech coordinators at Marshall, and these are folks that are senior level folks that we lean on sometimes to help identify markets within our organizations where we can send our high-tech companies. We're always looking for new technologies and those kind of things. And of course, Raji is those coordinators, and appreciate him being as a part of our team too. So yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview this morning. I'm going to kind of keep it as informal as I can. I may break in and share some stories with you, some of the things that I've seen over the years. And believe me, working 36 years, I'll be 36 years in December. It's you could almost write a book of all the things that I've experienced. NASA's been really good to me. Let me put it that way. Starting in '84, been able to get involved in the programs early on, and then because I was in the professional intern program, that kind of rotated me around a few other areas, but none really seemed to fit what I had to offer. Small business was a good fit for me. I always tell people I ended up at Marshall. I don't want to say it was divine intervention, but I certainly, that was not my target of employment. I was looking to get employed otherwise in other places. Alabama Power was top of my list. And I actually did get called, and then a week after I started at Marshall. I started on December the 12th, and it was my first day, and a week later, that long-awaited call that had been anticipated for almost a year from Alabama Power called and offered me a job. So I said, no thanks. I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't look at my requirement. I mean, my job as a job as such. I look at it as calling. And I think anybody that works in small business programs, if you really have a passion about the programs, it really is sort of maybe a calling of sorts, if you would. So that's kind of how I look at my job. I really want to help companies, because if companies are growing, if companies are expanding, it's creating jobs, not only creating jobs in our community, but all across the country. Just case in point, we did a survey, did a research effort on the Space Launch System program a few years ago. And we had asked all of our SLS prime contractors to identify all the small businesses that were in their supply chain. And when we got the information back, it totaled more than 700 small businesses in the supply chain of those major SLS contractors, which includes companies like Boeing, Aerojet, Rocketdyne, Northrop, and Teledyne Brown Local. And those 700 companies were spread across 48 states. So the impact of these programs is very important. And that's where I want to go kind of on the first slide, if you will. Raji, we'll go to that first one. Says, why do we support these small business programs? And again, it's really about our economy. It's about really about the infrastructure of our company. Our country. We cannot be a strong nation without a good foundation of business in our country. And it really all starts with small business. First one, preserve and promote the free enterprise system. How important is that? It's very important. And broad and industrial base. They say today that there's more than 28 million small businesses in America. Now, if there's 28 million, that's telling me there's a lot of mom and pop type companies, which is great too, probably working from their bedrooms or an office in the house. It's also about jobs. 43 to 45% of every job in this country is with a small business. And interestingly enough, looking at some of the data, if you go back to the early 90s, especially around 1993, if you recall, we were going through a very serious recession during that time, and there was a lot of the Fortune 500, the large companies were laying off folks left and right. So, really from 1993 all the way up to 2013, 65% of all the jobs that were created in the United States were placed with small companies, and that really hasn't changed that much. Then, if you look on the other side at innovation, inventiveness, it really if you're looking for innovations, it typically is going to come from the small business community. They're heavily involved in that type of research, and really a lot of the things that we take for granted in our homes today really evolved out of technologies that were started by small companies, and then to just sustain and maintain our economic growth in the country. So that's why I do what I do. That's why I enjoy doing what I do, because I think we, as small business specialists across the country, here in Huntsville and at all the other federal locations, if we do our job and we do it right, we're going to help our country in each of these areas. And let me share one story. I remember back in the early 90s, there was a gentleman by the name of Pony Lee. Some of you may know Pony. I haven't heard from him in years, but he had retired from Litton Corporation, and Pony had got his 8A certification, and he had bought a machine shop up in Tullahoma. OCG was the name of the company, and he was trying to get that company off the ground, get it going, and was really struggling. And at that time, we were putting 8A contracts. The 8A is just a special program that we can do, that we can use, and we could sole source back in those days to an 8A company. I think it was up to $3 million at that time. Now it's up to $4 million. So, Pony had been in my office. He talked to me 2 or 3 different times. He said, "David, I gotta get some work." I said, "Pony, I'm doing everything I can for you." I said, and we were putting 8A contracts in place left and right. In fact, during the early 90s, mid 90s, we had about 60 or 80 contracts on the books that were 8A contracts, and that was a very significant number. And what was really driving that was, at the time, the administrator was Dan Golden. And one of the initiatives that Dan had when he came in is he said, "We've got to start doing more business for the small disadvantaged business." When you look at how the money was spent, the type of companies that were getting the awards, STPs were not doing very well at all. I mean, in fractions of percentages. So we took on that new initiative, not only at Marshall, but all across NASA. And we built that STP base, and we did it by just what I say, we put an 8A contract, but I couldn't do anything for Pony. And I said, I remember he come in and he talked to me on I believe it was on a Thursday or Friday afternoon. And he said, "David, if I don't get something by the end of next week, some type of work," he said, "I'm probably going to have to close the doors on my business." So I said, "Well, Pony, I'm going to continue to look. If I see anything, I'll let you know." Well, meanwhile, on the Monday or Tuesday that following week, I got a call from the Department of Energy up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and they said, "David, we're looking for an 8A company that can do this and this and this." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I've got a company here that just might be the company you want to talk to." They wanted to do a sole source, and I mentioned Pony's company, gave the contact information, didn't think anything else about it. About a month later, I was sitting in a restaurant with some of my colleagues at work, and Pony came up to me in the cafeteria, and he reached his hand out and shook my hand. He said, "Thank you, David." He said, "That referral that you gave on my behalf," he said, "we ended up with a right at a $3 million award." So I say that to say this: the rest is history. Pony ended up eventually moving into Huntsville when USPI deserted the big building downtown. He moved his operation in there, and his company started to grow. And lithium panels, he was building those for the external tank that was being full scale produced at the time down at the shoe assembly facility, and that's one of our satellite facilities down in New Orleans. And Pony ended up selling that company. I think it was maybe the early 2000 time frame. I don't remember. But at the time, I think he had over 500 employees and was generating sales of more than $50 million a year. So that's just one of many, many stories that I could tell you, could share with you, that I've had the joy of experiencing over my life. I could talk to you about companies like Madison Corporation, Morgan Research, Quality Research, on and on and on, and Computer Systems Technology. All of these companies came in at one time when there was just one person or two people. But it shouldn't be a surprise, because if you think about it, this big corporation called Boeing started in a garage. So that's why these programs are important. It allows us to keep building and growing and expanding our base. And so I'm real happy to be a part of the Marshall Space Flight Center, part of NASA. And if we go to this next slide, Raji, this is kind of a snapshot of how we're set up across the country. A lot of these charts are just going to be eye charts, but of course you'll see us located there in Huntsville, and then of course we've got a satellite facility down at the Michoud Assembly Facility, which I've already mentioned. And the uniqueness of this is that all of the centers buy a lot of the same things in terms of the institutional support they need to run their facility. But when it gets into the high-tech end of it, programs can vary from center to center. So it's important that if you're looking to do business with NASA, that you realize that. In other words, you might come to Marshall, and what it is that you're offering, we may not have a need for it. And many times I've told companies, I said, hey, we don't really buy this kind of technology or this kind of services. However, you might go over to Johnson. I think they probably do. And so that's kind of how we work it back and forth. And, they'll send companies our way too from the other areas around. Looking at Marshall, let's go to the next slide. SFC at a glance. I'll show you some numbers here in a few minutes, but it is incredible where we sit today in terms of our total spend at Marshall. But budget this year was about $3.7 billion. We've got about 6,000 on-site employees when we're working in a normal situation. About 2,300 of that is civil servants. I've already mentioned to you our facility down in New Orleans, the Michoud Assembly Facility, world-class operation. One of the largest production facilities in the world resides on that campus, which has about 850 acres. Of course, we're tenants out on the Marshall Space Flight Center. We occupy about 1,800 acres of this 38,000 acre complex, which is just an incredible complex. So many things going on right here in Huntsville, Alabama, Madison, around in our county, and so forth. Let's move on to the next slide, and let's really take a quick look at the Huntsville marketplace overall. When I started out here in '84, you folks that are living out in Madison, I can remember when a lot of that was cotton fields. And of course, I remember growing up as a kid. I remember before I lost my eyesight, I remember seeing cotton field that was spread everywhere up in this area. But look at where we're at today. Huntsville is the second largest government spending center in the country. That means that more procurement dollars flow through the procurement offices on site, Redstone Arsenal, than anywhere else in the country. We have the second largest research park. Cummings Research Park is absolutely incredible research facility, second only to Triangle over in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And as of today, if everything was normal, about 42,000 people come to work out here every day. And they say that within the next, a couple of years, that number's probably going to rise to more than 60,000. So that means a lot of economic growth is still looking to come to Huntsville. And of course, we've got the new tenant FBI that's set up out here, and that's going to be a big time operation once they get everything set up. So let's move on to the next slide. Opportunities for small companies come through direct opportunities, that's direct contracting, and through subcontracting. And if you go to the next slide, the federal government has mandated goals that we have to adhere to. Overall, 23% of every dollar spent in the United States through the federal government is 23% of those dollars are to go to small companies. And then you have the other mandated goals. The only goal that we actually can negotiate down off of is at 23%. So you'll see our percent goal is negotiated down a little bit less. That was based on FY19, but we're stuck with those others. And so there's challenges that we have to meet in terms of trying to meet our goals. And then the federal government has given us the ability to meet those goals by giving us set-aside options. If you go to the next slide, these are the set-aside options that we have. We can do A to A, we can do HUB-zone set-asides, service disabled vet, women-owned, or just straight out small business set-asides. Next slide, it gives you a little breakdown of our spend over the last few years and kind of where we've been in terms of our small business numbers. So that's FY16 through 19, and as you look at the one thing that really should I would ask you to focus on is that top line, the procurement spend. That's obligated dollars that we on contracts. And as you can see, that number is continuing to climb. And I'm going to show you a number here in a few minutes on the FY20 to date, and it's going to be a little eye-opening, I think, to all of you that follow what's going on out here. You'll see our goals that we negotiate with headquarters. You'll see our performance against our goals. And every goal on that page, small across, STB, woman-owned, HUBZone, except 1 year on HUBZone, Marshall has met all of their goals. And so HUBZone had been a little bit of a challenge, but there again, we got HUBZone set-aside authority, so we're doing HUBZone set-aside occasion. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at FY19 and break it down real quickly from an agency standpoint versus Marshall. You'll see the agency numbers. Agency put $17.7 billion on contracts last year. That is significant. That's the highest ever. And I can go ahead and tell you, we're going to exceed that number this year when all the numbers come in. You'll see our number, the $2,573 million. All of the NASA centers, including Marshall together, about $3 billion of the total spend went to small companies through direct contracting. And then at Marshall, we hit several high marks last year. Look at the small business number, the $301 million. That's the highest ever. Woman-owned was the highest, as well as the service disabled vet. And in fact, through FY19, Marshall was one of the few centers that had exceeded that mandated 3% goal for service disabled vet. And in 19, that made it 3 years in a row for us. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide and let's look at what we buy real quick. So you're going to have a couple of slides here. We'll start with the first one. And these were the top 25 contracts that have received obligations at Marshall in FY19. And I did want to show you a couple of them. And in particular, the first one you'll see there's a Marshall Engineering Technician Trade Support. We're getting a lot of our STB dollars off of that contract. And the reason we're able to do that is because that one has been historically been competed as an 8A set aside, and it is currently in competition as an 8A. Another one there that you see would be the Marshall Information Technology Services that All Points has. That one was competed as a service disabled vet set aside. So again, you're going to see quite a few different set aside options that we have applied to some of these competitions over the years. Now, of course, let's go ahead and let's move on to the next slide and we'll continue on down. And so what really drives those decisions, whether we're going to set aside just straight out small or SBB or woman-owned or whatever.
Hey, David, I don't know if you can hear me, but we have about 5 minutes left.
David, they only have about 5 minutes left.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we better roll on here. So let's move on to the next slide. And here's some other things that we buy. You'll see those listed there for you. SBIR, remember we said innovative technologies and so forth, very, very important. And then FY20 metrics. I did want to get to this one. Let's go to the next slide. And you'll see as of through August 31st, the agency was 16 billion and plus. We were at 3.1 billion, but let me tell you that as of this morning, when we closed the books out last night on the fiscal year, Marshall will have spent $3.521 billion. That's $1 billion more than we spent in FY19. So our budget, our spend is going up, and we're really excited about that. If you're interested in competing, go to the next slide. Here's just a few things that you're going to want to consider, things you need to do in terms of being able to be effective, effective at going after our requirements 18, 24 months out. And then the next slide is just a continuation. And these are some other things to consider. I won't go into all of these for the sake of time. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. And so we're looking again, looking at, let's see, I'm trying to I may have lost which side I'm on. What is that? Other contributions coming in, and I'm going to go on to, let's move on down to the FY19 NASA versus Marshall subcontracting dollars, so we can get a real quick look at that one. Raji, it should be another slider down, but anyway, you'll see here the total number of dollars that went to small businesses through the subcontracting programs. And that's very important. Subcontracting, a lot of folks think, well, we're not doing business if we don't have a direct contract, but you are. If you're a subcontractor to one of our major primes, you are doing business with us. And there again, about $3 billion went to small companies for the subcontracting. When you put that with the direct, so about $6 billion of our $17.7 billion spend ended up going to small businesses in FY19. If you look at the next slide, here's a breakdown of our top 10 small business contract or large business contracts based on total obligations in 19. And interestingly enough, if you look up and down that list, you're going to see Space Launch System listed several times. That is the program that is receiving a lot of funding right now. As of through FY19, top 3 actually are SLS contracts. I think there's a total of 5 on that chart. Now that's going to change as we start looking at our numbers this year, FY20. And the reason being, go to the next slide. It's called the Landing System. That's our new program, and it's going to be an exciting program. We started the fiscal about early on in the fiscal year. We put some concept studies out. You'll see the companies listed. And then we awarded 3 contracts, 10-month study contracts. You go to the next slide, you will see them. And these contracts have been funded significantly. That's where a lot of that extra funding has come in FY19. A large percentage of that $1 billion that we're talking about. So if you're running 2 programs, SLS, and you're running HLS now programs, you're going to see a lot of new faces. Blue Origin, for example, we've not dealt with them directly. SpaceX, first time we've dealt with them. Of course, we know Dynetics, they're local. And so we're excited about the future of opportunities at Marshall. Let's move on to the next. Here's some resources I wanted to let you know about. So you'll see the website there. If you hadn't had a change to business, it's a good place to go. We have a planning tool. We have a forecast tool. And then one of the best marketing information package that we have is our small business marketing guide. And you can go to that website and download that guide. It's got a lot of good information in it. And then I wanted to spend just a few minutes, and I know we're running out of time here on it, so just talk about business realities, something that we have to deal with day in and day out. But each year, about 1 million new small businesses are started in this country. The reality, though, is that 40% of them are going to fail within the first year, 80% by year 5, 96% 10th year. And so it's sometimes difficult to get a company up and going. But, you know, if we get through 10 years and 4% of those companies have matured and have grown, and then, you know, the program is worthwhile because, again, we're continuing to expand that business space. But just a couple of things I'd leave with you. And doing marketing and working with companies all of these years, I think there's some keys that are significant. One of them is the team. I'm very big on team. One of the reasons our program has been very successful is because we spend a lot of time developing and expanding and growing our team, the support people, both internally, externally, very important. I like to always refer back to Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. He talks about the who questions must come before the what questions and how true that is. Get the bad off the bus, the good on before you figure out where you're going to drive it. Making sure that the values of your people on your team align with your values, especially the ownership of the company. And old cliche, if you have to tightly manage someone, you probably made a hiring mistake. Steve Jobs was once asked the question, what was his greatest accomplishment? Was it the creation of the computer, the Apple computer, or the iPhone, or any of the others? He said, none of those. He said, my greatest accomplishment was the ability to pull together the right team to go off and do the things that needed to be done to produce these new innovations that he's talking about. The reality about business is business is people, 85% people is 15% technology, and that basically says that if you want to be successful, it really comes down to your people. People is first, with technology a distant second. And just remember, you need a team to obtain a dream. Moving on real quickly to the next slide. Planning is another very important key to successful business. And if you want to be one of those companies that makes it through those 10 years, it's got to be one of the most important keys. Harvard School of Business once did a study, and they said 85% of all business failures in this country was a result of poor planning, and I couldn't agree more. Most companies, if you want to look at those companies that made it and those that didn't, kind of right at the core of it, they were not good planners. They didn't do a really good job of it. So never greet the morning without a map. Very, very important. And so you're going to have a plan. You need to know where you're going to go. John Blanchard once said that absent planning in one's life is like a ship upon the sea without a rudder, and how true that is. And then moving on quickly to the next slide. Just toss this out. You need the importance of networking, building relationships. And I probably share this more with startup companies than I do anybody else. I said, if you really want to be successful in what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, make sure that you are building good, positive relationships, because that really, in this day and time that we're in, that is absolutely critical. And John Blanchard said we'll be that 5 years from now, we'll be the average of what we are today, the average of the people that you, 5 people you most closely associated with. And that is
Hey,
very,
David, we
very
probably
true.
need to wrap up.
That
Sorry.
contracts and your network will determine your net worth. So I'm going to close at that. I'm sorry that run a little bit over, but if anybody wants to get in touch with us, the further discussion about if you're a business owner, please do. In fact, the last slide has got our contact information in it. Raji there on the small business office, and we would be more than glad to chat with you and talk about that marketplace at Marshall and across NASA. Thank you.
David didn't say was the Marshall Space Flight Center just won the small business, best small business program across the agency. He just got that award yesterday. So that's just a testament. And if you looked to see all the goals that we had at Marshall Space Flight Center, we exceeded every single one of them. And that's mostly due to David. I think, Peter, you can post these charts so people that need that contact information can get it.
I'll send these charts out. Thank you so much, David. We certainly appreciate all you do and Rajiv does to bring those dollars and to spend those dollars here in our area. So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for all you do. With that being said, we'll go ahead and stand for the four-way test. All right. Of the things we think, say, or do, first. Second. Third. And fourth. Thank y'all. Have a great Thursday.